Hello and welcome to Finding Your Holy Grail, a show produced through Passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. We would like to thank station manager Jeannie White and CEO Lillian Coldwell. This podcast is not a medical show, so for advice, consult your healthcare provider. Finding Your Holy Grail is all about living fearlessly in the post-pandemic world. And we provide our listeners with very practical resources on how to do exactly that. I am your host, Dr. Mandy Simon. This week, I am exploring how we get to discover our true purpose in life by tapping into our burning desire. It is a process which starts by recognizing that we are so much more than our self-limiting beliefs. I will be sharing an amazing discussion that I recorded recently with an incredible life coach, Janine Brolly, who supports people to reclaim that part of themselves that got abandoned in the journey of life. The interview itself is part of an online speaker series for the community where I talked with 25 experts from around the globe who have been sharing their perspectives for navigating the post-pandemic reality we find ourselves in. And this series is free to subscribing members of the Finding Your Holy Grail community. To watch these video discussions, sign up at www.findingyourholygrail.com. The interviews themselves are incredible, and the expert speakers explore different aspects of our conscious and subconscious minds. They make the important point that as a humanity, we have moved from human doing to human being, and they share insights to help us flourish by adopting new ways of living. In this podcast, I am delighted to be sharing the interview that I recorded with Janine Brolly. So without further ado, let's dive into this 25-minute discussion. Hello and welcome to Finding Your Holy Grail. My name is Mandy Simon and I am your host. Today, I am joined by Janine Brolly, who we were actually just talking before we came on to our recording today about how this time last year, we were going through the preparations of figuring out where we stood in the world because the pandemic was coming. So Janine, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're very happy to have you here.
Thank you, Mandy. And just, I just want to say I'm honored and so grateful just that I've kind of met this soul sister, I would like to say, but I love what you're up to. And I mean, much needed in the world right now. So hats off to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the connection that we've made, the congruency of the work that you've done in terms of what it is that we're up to in this community, as you say. And it would just be lovely to hear some of your reflections and definitely about your background. But we are really looking at what does it all mean in this post-pandemic world at this time.
Yeah, beautiful. It's funny because just this morning, I grabbed my computer and up popped a video that I did when this whole thing started happening back in March. And I thought, oh, interesting timing. I'm doing this interview with you today and this popped up. And so I was watching it. I'm like, yeah, like that's interesting where we were a year ago and where we are now. And what I was sharing in that video, and I still holds true, is that I personally believe this whole pandemic, this whole crisis, it really is, it's a time of awakening, right? It's, you know, we're actually told to go to our rooms, you know, go to our homes, go to our rooms. And it was like humanity's on this one big timeout. And I really believe that whenever there's a global crisis or some kind of crisis, whether it's collective or personal, but there's a real opportunity, immense opportunity for awakening. So a lot of people think global crisis or any kind of crisis is like, the world's ending, but I see it that there's actually opportunity. And I really believe that's what it's all about. You know, there is a silver lining. And, you know, for me, what I reflected is like, what is most important, right? And we were told to go to our homes and, you know, spend time with loved ones. And, you know, so it's like that reflection time. And, not to give our power away. And yeah, there's just so much silver lining in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible, and it's true. And like you, I had an experience about a week and a half ago, because I have a podcast, and I released I released an episode that was like, where were you this time last year?
Oh, wow.
And it was because on March 16th I had been flying back to the United States, and so I had this 1 year retrospective, and to really think about where we were then, where we are now. What
Mm.
does this essentially mean for us in terms of where do we feel that we are in the world? Where do we understand ourselves as being?
Mhm.
Um, and this reflection time, I love the way that you're putting it. We had to go to our rooms, right?
Yeah. And
And
think about it.
yeah,
Think
and
about
think
how we've been
about,
treating each other and the universe and the planet and our environment, right? Think
yeah,
about it. And, and I think a lot of people have, some yes, some no, it's been interesting. It's funny. I actually did a blog too around, I noticed as we went through like March, April, May, June, and I was speaking to different people, and it seemed like a common thing that was popping up was I was saying, well, how are you? And they'd be like, I hate to say it, but I'm actually doing quite well.
yeah,
And it was almost like, I think I named the blog something like feeling good for feeling bad, or no, feeling bad for feeling good.
yeah,
And the sense like, oh, like people are dying, part of the world's crumbling away. And, and they just felt bad for feeling good. It's like, no, us feeling bad doesn't help anyone, right? Like we need that doesn't help, right? It's like we need to rise. We need to really come into our own more than any. And I have seen a lot of people really, really awaken during this time, and it's beautiful to witness.
yeah. And it's true, because when people are feeling badly, they're feeling, I think the word is guilt. And it is this aspect that all of us can so strongly identify with as
Mm.
human beings. And what we're really saying is we don't want to leave anyone behind. We're sorry for this suffering, as I'm sure that you addressed in your blog, and just really, looking at what does it mean for us when we feel other people hurting, and trying to empathize with them, but then recognizing that because this is a time of renewal, even if we don't understand it, that it creates an energy in us that really allows us to robustly move forward in ways that perhaps we can't even understand, but we're only beginning to live.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Beautiful.
yeah.
Well said.
Oh, thank you. I would
Yeah.
love if you could share a little bit about your background and the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I guess a segue there would be that, pandemic or not, it's the sense that, when we're awakening, it's this sense that hear people a lot say, they want to be more abundant or more wealthy or more whole, and they want to come into themselves more. And during the pandemic, it's like people were kind of bumping up against that. And to give a bit of my background is that what I really believe and what I share with people and really work on having them embody is that, yes, we want that. We want that in our outer world. We want more wealth. We want more abundance. We want more wholeness. We want more connection. And yet at our core, it's who we are.
Yeah.
At our core, we truly are wealthy. We really are truly abundant. We are whole already. So my whole, my background, I'll just give a high level, sort of a bird's eye view, is that in my 20s, I was all about the physicality in our bodies. And, I was in corporate health, a kinesiologist. I was even a personal trainer, a fitness instructor. And then as I went into my 30s, I'm like, there's something more going on here. And more than just this physicality. And I started kind of questioning things, and personally to start with. And then I went into some modalities, acupressure therapy, energy practitioner, and really got tried to understand this quantum world, that we're not just these physical beings, right? We're so much more. We're about the seen and the unseen. And so for me, that's sort of my transition into realizing what I call the truth of who we are. And so I've had to do a lot of unlearning.
Yeah.
I've had to do a lot of unlearning. And, I kind of went through this phase where, I realized in hindsight, like I had a pretty good life, and, career, money, travel, beautiful daughters, I was married at the time, a nice house, and, things were good,
Yeah.
pretty good. But then I had this epiphany later on. I divorced and I was in this relationship. It fell apart. Well, it just wasn't a fit. And I just remember thinking, this is so painful. I never want to feel like this again. And I'm like, what is this all about? And I realized I was giving away my energy and my power. And I think this is all the pandemic's all about, is like reclaiming our power. Where do we give it away? And for me, I don't know if I shared with you, but I'm adopted. And I realized I had been doing my energy, my whole life with this proving energy, proving I was
Yeah.
worthy,
Yes.
proving I was lovable. And it was this proving. And so I was taking care of everyone else and I was forgetting about myself. And so that's where I had this good life, but I felt like something's missing. Like there's got to be more to this life than what's happening. And that's where I go back to this, the physicality. I realized, started awakening to that I am so much more than just this body. You, me, we all are so much more than this body. And we know that, but it's like, how do we really embody that? How do we really integrate that? And for me, when I started shifting that, I had, yes, my business went from 6 to 7 figures. The external world, but my dream host, so those external world stuff happen, which are great. I'm super grateful for that. But it all was a stem from the transformation of really owning that part of me that I had abandoned myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we all have different forms of ways we're abandoned, they're
Right.
programmed. And so we've got to watch, where do we abandon ourselves and how can we reclaim those parts of ourselves? I think that ties in very closely with the whole pandemic. Is like, okay, where have we really abandoned ourselves personally and as well as collectively to reclaim our power back, right? That we're so much more than what we might just see on the surface, right?
Yeah, it's, you've made so many incredible points, and I love the color, like the corollary that you're putting to things in the pandemic and the lessons that we can learn.
Hmm.
And it's wonderful to hear you sharing, that you see the connection between your own experience of being adopted and this issue of proving ourselves as being
Yeah.
abandoned.
Yeah.
And this is actually, I like the terminology that you use, which is the unlearning. I often refer to
Mhm.
it as we're so conditioned that we get to be deconditioned. And it's exactly the same thing, but it's this
Absolutely.
idea, yeah, it's this idea that we're so many things in everyday life that we truly are not. And
Yeah.
this is what you're talking about, is that you were always a very wealthy person. You were always a very deep and spiritually connected individual. And it was how all of the outside world was piled up in the day that was allowing whatever little bit of room was left for your light to shine through,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I often talk about, like, what our inner GPS is set to, right? For me,
Yeah,
my inner GPS, despite having a good life, like,
yeah,
it was pretty good. I just kept having this yearning, like, oh, there's something more, something's missing. But my inner GPS was not set to me. It was set to, as I was saying earlier, it was set to him, her, them, that, government, teachers, right? Every society. It
yeah.
was set to like how I should show up.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, between my own personal journey, working with thousands of people,
Mm.
it is so prevalent, whether people realize it or not. It is so prevalent. And that's partly why I started teaching, a piece of my teaching is because it's such a common theme,
Yeah.
right? It's such a common theme.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I when I hear you say that, I of course identify to these experiences in my own life, and this is really what ends up connecting us. And as we're talking about in this series in particular, is a huge part of your work that you do. And it really is, I mean, the work that I spend so much time on. And it's this whole aspect that all of those things that you were doing before all of that was that you were not being who you are. And
Mhm.
so it's this distinction when we move from human doing to literally human being,
Yeah.
and this magic that unfolds because we are absolutely perfect as we truly are. We just get to spend some time figuring out who that is because we spent so much time learning who we weren't,
Yeah.
right? To
Oh,
follow that point. Yeah.
I'm smiling because as we talked about, I have two programs and I always go into the energy archetypes. So my other program, I talk about the energy archetypes, and my my wealth creation program, I talk about the wealth energy archetypes. And in my energy archetypes, in my first program, I talk about one of my very first one is the human doer versus the human being. So I
It's so
love that we
amazing.
have the same verbiage, but it's so prevalent, right? Like we have absolutely become human doers. We do, go, be, we're not doing the being. And I think it's a big reason is because we're so afraid to be and feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're
And
afraid to feel.
this is the profound point that you're making actually about the pandemic, is that when we got sent to our rooms and we got to
Couldn't say that.
self-isolate,
Yeah.
then we had to feel. And, many of us didn't like timeouts as children, and there's a reason for that, right? And it's because the reality of the situation gets the time and space to settle in to the reality of what we're actually experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
love that.
really, really amazing. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, as we look at all of these pieces and we're trying to unpack it for ourselves, just recognizing that we can be open. We can actually be open to understanding things that perhaps don't make sense in our day,
Mhm.
and recognize that, I mean, so many of us know, not just understand, but really just know
The
that,
capital T. Yeah.
yeah, that these are not accidents, these are not coincidences. And
Mhm.
so if we can be open to receiving what are the lessons of our world and our experiences at this time, and how we can participate by listening from within to what it is that is trying to come and be on the surface.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that because it really is, we talk about the truth, right? The truth of um, who we are and who we're really not, and we're unlearning.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of my teaching is around, despite what circumstances are,
Yeah.
post post pandemic or no pandemic, just period, is that we look around ourselves, we look around circumstances, appearance, what society thinks, family thinks, your own beliefs,
Mhm.
right? We're so accustomed to making decisions and living our lives according to the untruths around us,
Yeah.
or the reality around us, right? The reality is, oh well, maybe my business isn't as good as it was, maybe I don't have as much money in my bank account, maybe I don't have the connections that, like, we're looking at what is. And I always say, just because something is real in your outer circumstances doesn't make it our truth. But
That's
we've
right.
really attached to, well, this is what I can see,
Mhm.
smell, taste, touch, hear.
Mhm.
So we don't access that higher faculties. So we end up going, well, this is my truth,
Mhm.
right? And we really have to, back to the awakening, realize what we see, smell, to all these five senses, these limited five senses, they are a beautiful thing just because we get to experience them because we're here as in human physical form, but we're not accessing all of ourselves. When we start accessing that, hey, well, I can go into my will, and I can visualize and imagination, these higher faculties, and that's where the power is we can rise above what is. And there's never been a more important time to understand that than now, or during the last 12 months, that don't fall prey. I don't mean that like, but be cautious that we're not falling prey to the circumstances, the news. It is a horrible thing what's been happening, but by feeling bad about it, and it doesn't help. So it's like, how can I be part of the solution and rise above
Mhm.
and not fall prey to that?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
it really does come down to using the human faculties that we've had available to us for quite some time, which is discernment and
Yeah.
discipline and things that we can say, look, awareness. I recognize for myself that if I watch the news, for example, for a period of time, I start to feel really depressed. And we have speakers in this expert field with you who are literally talking about, you know, how energy is viral, and we as semi-permeable membranes absorb this. And so when we look at the work that you're doing and what it is that you're talking about, and we recognize that all of these pieces matter. So perhaps recognizing that it's a 1 hour news story. It's on a 24-hour cycle. And this is what I say to people all the time, because I've been in front of classrooms, I have patients that I see, all of these types of things. And I say, at some point, we get to make choices about what gets to be part of our day. And when we make those choices, it's very empowering. And then recognizing not making a choice is still making a choice.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's interesting because I'll profess that I'm not a big news watcher, but I will tap in and just to kind of be, wise to what's going on. But when this all happened, I mean, I say this, it's fascinating. It's fascinating what's happening. I'm not saying fascinating like, whoa, this is cool, but it's interesting. It's fascinating. It's a time in history. And so I started watching it more and more, and I noticed this real sadness started coming up, and it didn't feel like mine. It felt like this collective sadness, right? And so, yeah, I had to feel that, but I also had to like going, okay, wake up, Janine. Don't just be, glued to it going, holy moly, like what's going on here? But you're right. It can really draw us in.
Yeah.
And I love what you say about choice. I speak to this a lot, is that I don't think we realize as humans, we get to choose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's a very powerful thing we get to do as humans. Like, like animals don't get to choose. I mean, very, very little, right? We get to choose with our mind how we want to show up and what decisions we want to do. What shows we want to watch, whatever, right? And are we choosing, low vibration? Are we getting sucked into the boob tube? Are we like what we get to choose? That's a very, very powerful ability we have.
Yeah. And I've been noticing up on your windowsill, where it says love. And when we're talking about, the two strongest energies in the planet, the highest one is love and the lowest one is fear.
Yeah.
And, really, really understanding, the tipping of the scales with this. And so, being aware in ourselves and recognizing where we choose these things, because we understand that even just envisioning, as you were saying before, if we envision something, let's say we envision love, and then we can start to feel love in our bodies, and then we can start to associate times when we've had love, and we can look at that. Even those tiny little things pull us up in a way that on the hardest day, we recognize that it might be just enough to make the choice that we've been putting off.
Yeah.
And just it's these types of moments that we get to understand how capable we are, and that an awakening of any sort, it's never straightforward. It feels hard because it's work, it's
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Mm.
Beautiful. No,
It's
it's like
work.
that little meme they have of success. People think it's success is like this, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I think I'll go back here. And, it's a little wobbly at times, right? But
Well, and it depends, right? Because it can be all of those things, as you're
yeah.
saying.
Yeah. But what did I did a Facebook Live a little while ago, and I talked about Dory from, the fish in the, just keep swimming, just keep
Yes.
swimming.
Yep,
It's the same thing.
exactly.
Just stay the course, stay the course, stay the course, right? But usually what happens is people go, oh, this doesn't feel good. And I got to sit home and feel. I got, you know what I mean? Like they bump up against their stuff and then we revert. But when you are awake, you realize you can see things for what they are. You go, okay, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Stay the course, stay the course, stay the course. But
Yeah.
yeah, so important.
It's so important. And you have so many tools in your arsenal, as I like to say. I would love for you to share with our community what it is that you've made available to them as a free tool to help them navigate
Yeah, I
this.
would love to. So I have a video training, and it is called, let me just pull this up one
Yeah.
sec. How to increase your wealth by shifting to specific vibrations. So it's a short training, but full of some nuggets. And I am also creating the 10 wealth energy archetypes. So if anyone subscribes to the first one I just mentioned, how to increase your wealth by shifting these two specific vibrations, they will also get the 10 wealth energy archetypes.
Right. I think this is so useful. And when we're talking about archetypes, it can be such an amazing experience for people if they don't really understand them, or for people that have worked with archetypes in the past, because it's just a nice way to easily spot what's going on and be able to quickly identify.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. It's lovely that you're
Yeah.
doing that. And for everyone who's watching right now, this is available on the speakers page. You just click the link to do that. But if you're catching us after this series, I'd love, Janine, for you to list your website so people can find you.
Sure. JanineBrolly.com. So JANINEBROLLY.com. JanineBrolly.com.
Perfect. Wonderful. And thank you for making that available. I think I just loved it. I loved it when you told me about it, and I think that it's going to be amazing for the community. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Amazing. So are there other thoughts that you think would be really helpful to our community today about what we're talking about in terms of ways of being and sort of what you do to help people prepare?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is going back to realizing that we are not what we believe is our limited self.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We are so much more than we get ourselves credit for. And I talk a lot about burning desire, right? Activating your burning desire, because we are all here to live out our highest calling, our wealthiest life possible. And I don't care if we call it burning desire, yearning, what's pulling on our heartstrings, calling, whatever. But we've all come here to do that. And it's paramount that we understand that. So that becomes our guiding light, our North Star, or like I was saying earlier, our inner GPS. So, finding time where there's just getting still, going within, and just discovering what that is, because that just, everything starts falling into place from there. But
I thank you for sharing this. I think your message is so powerful because it is recognizing that it's okay in the silence for it to maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable, because that's really on the other side of that is what you're telling us is where we're supposed to be. It's why we're here.
It's why we're here.
Yeah, it's why we're here. It's really incredible. And I think one of the things that I've enjoyed so much about doing this series is being able to connect with each of you in your careers and see what it is that you're doing and how you're bringing your messages forward, and what has really happened to each of us, because the planet is in this together. And as we continue to recognize that, we might have to keep swimming.
Yeah. Stay the course. Keep on swimming. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to honor you, not just for highlighting me. Thank you so much, but all the speaker series, and even not that, but just that you're answering your calling, your burning desire. Like, we were talking, like, when and you can't not do it, right? You're following what is being pulled on your heartstrings, and you're doing your part to awaken, the planet. So I just want to honor you, because it's huge.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so meaningful to me. And and I guess the thought that's going through my head right now is all the things that we're probably going to be able to create together, because there's so much to do. And this is what happens when we find people that are on that journey with us. And it's just wonderful that this is where we've met along the way.
Yeah. There are no accidents. Yeah.
Yeah.
Divine timing, divine purpose, divine everything.
Absolutely. And so to that point, thank you for living your most authentic path and sharing it with our community at this time.
Thank you, Mandy.
Yeah. And for all of you who are watching, I'm so happy that you're here. We look forward to reading your comments on the video and having you follow along and looking at Janine's work and getting much more familiar with what she does. She's, from a transformational perspective, it's just really incredible. I love the way that you approach this subject and just the openness and joy that you have around it. So thank you again for joining us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My honor.
Everyone, I'll see you next time. Okay. Yeah. What a great conversation. I loved Janine's explanation that people want to be more embodied, abundant, whole, and connected. In the quantum world, this is the truth of who we are, and we all get to choose. And what really resonates for me in Janine's guidance is on rising above circumstance. She states, just because something is real, it doesn't make it our truth. I think it's incredible how Janine supports people to unlearn who they thought they were in order to become who they really, truly are. This week's challenge for each of you at home is to recognize that you have a North Star and to give yourself permission to be guided by it. So, number one, be still and go within. Ask what aspects of yourself might have been eclipsed by prioritizing other people's wants above your own. Number two, is there unfinished business which you feel compelled to complete in your life? Do you have an unresolved burning desire, whether in health, relationships, finances, or personal growth? Three, realign to that inner truth and live with purpose by embodying who you really are. You get to choose. You can find out more about Janine Brolly and her High Powered Living program at www.janinebrolly.com. I want to thank Passionate World Talk Radio for providing a platform on their internet radio station for our show, Finding Your Holy Grail. For more information, you can go to www.passionateworldtalkradio.com. To subscribe to our community, go to www.findingyourholygrail.com. Here, you as a subscribing member will have access to all the videos that I've recorded since 2020, including this latest series of 25 speakers that talk about our subconscious and conscious minds and going from human doing to human being. Until next week, keep well and stay brave.